Our next project is going to explore value, and we are going to be doing an India ink still life painting. So value is an element of design. You can think about value as being defined as the lights and darks in an artwork. Value can be black, white, and ranges of gray. Value can even be a color. When you're referencing the lights, also sometimes called tints, and darks, also sometimes called shades of that color. So think about, for example, the color red. You can have a pink, which is its tint, or a dark maroon shade of that same color. When we're talking about value, what we're really talking about is implied light. We can think about, when we're looking at an object, we realize that light is coming from a single source, and that we're creating on a two-dimensional page what appears to be a three-dimensional form. Light is what helps make things look three-dimensional. We understand that the light is coming from the left-hand side of this flat two-dimensional page here, right? It's what's helping create the dimension of those objects. Cast shadows is another thing that helps to ground those objects. A cast shadow is the shadow that you see there that is on the imagined floor that objects cast upon something. Now, artists have been interested in using value to create drama in work, dating all the way back to that Renaissance. Chiaroscuro is Italian for light and dark, and it's used to describe the way in which artists record the natural contrast of light and shadow in the world. So you are going to set up your own still life at home using a minimum of 3 objects. Try to choose simple objects. Think about using organic shapes, cylinders, spheres, or boxes. Those will all work well for this project. You should have a single light source, meaning you should set up like a lamp of some kind that will neatly cast highlights, shadows, and cast shadows. So one single light works best for this, and having it at a very close distance to your objects will help set up those cast shadows. Have fun and try a few different arrangements until you find the one that you like. You are going to have to do 2 of these, so you can use the same objects in both arranged in different ways, or you could use 2 totally different setups for each ink drawing. So, setting up your paper, you're going to use your Strathmore drawing paper. You're going to cut the paper in half because you are doing 2 of these. You should tape a half sheet of the paper down on all 4 sides. It's very important that you tape it down on all 4 sides. If you don't, the paper tends to wrinkle and buckle and you'll get a very messy looking piece. Like I said, it's very important it's down on all 4 sides. Because otherwise it will cause you problems if you don't. The first step is creating the underdrawing. Now the drawing should be done very lightly in pencil. If you're using the pencils from your drawing kit, the HB is the best one to use. It's right in the middle. It's not too light, not too dark. You should be lightly mapping out your shapes and also looking for your highlights and shadows as you go. So kind of map out in general where those highlights and shadows are. It's important to map out the highlights as well because you're going to need to leave those areas white. Once you put down the ink, there's no erasing. Also make sure that you clean up any extra lines before starting in the ink. You can't really erase out the pencil once you have the ink down, so you want to kind of erase out any kind of mistakes or little accidents that you might have had. The next step is setting up your ink value. So using your India ink, you're going to create a range of value for your drawing. The best thing for this, you should have done this already doing your little ink value study, but you should either use ice cube tray if you have one at home. Just a regular ice cube tray works well. You can also use one of these little plastic palette things if you have one. If you don't have an ice cube tray or one of these little palettes, you can also use a few small little cups and set up your different values within them. But it makes it easier to have a variety of values set up ahead of time. One of your little trays can have the full ink in it, and then you kind of start spreading out the ink in lighter ones by taking dips from the one prior to it. You can add a drop or two to the beginning darker values, and then you're kind of spreading it out until the thinner values. Make sure that you have a test sheet right next to your drawing. You can see it there on the left of mine. That way you can test your values on it as you're setting them up. You're also going to want this test sheet as you start to go into the ink drawing itself. That way you can kind of test what value is on the brush before you place it onto your drawing. Because remember, with the India ink, once it's down, you cannot erase. Okay, so as you're getting started, make sure that you are looking for those areas of value. You should have no outlines. So that means you're not taking the ink and drawing a hard outline around the objects. We're going to try to let our areas of value create those edges. So that dark shadow in some situations might create the edge for, say, my tomato. In other situations, the white of an edge might actually create my edge of the cup. So you're really kind of just comparing areas of value to one another. As you can see here, you're going to start lighter. You can also use water to help you control an area that you want to keep the value within. So if I lay down a nice area of just sort of clear water, then I can know that as I lay down the ink, it's going to stay within that area that's wet. Water can also help with the blending. So if I put a darker area down and I want to blend it out and kind of have a more seamless area, that water's going to help sort of spread and blend things out. That really helps in cast shadow areas. The other thing that you should have handy with you is a series of paper towels. If you make a mistake, sometimes you can quickly blot up that area. The paper towel also can help with blending as you go, and you get some interesting effects when you actually put the paper towel down on the paper itself. And like I said, as you go, you can always add to make it darker. You can't take away the ink, so that's something to think about as you're working. You want to have sort of a work to the dark. The other thing with your Sumi ink brush, if you can kind of notice as I'm working here, how hard you press matters. The harder you press, the wider the brush gets. The lighter you press, the thinner it gets. So you want to kind of think about using that to help you control your line as you go. So let's see a sped up version of this. So as you're working, remember you're comparing values one next to each other. So you're going to think about filling in the entire paper. You're going to try to fill the whole sheet with value, so that edges are created through your use of value, not just with line.